Good evening, friends, and welcome to another edition of Crime Time with DutyRon and Ed Wallace. We are retired New York City police detectives, and if you like all things true crime related from the police detective's perspective, you're in the right spot. Hit the subscribe button, hit that notification bell, so you'll get all things DutyRon and Ed Wallace when we go live or upload another video. Hey, tonight we're going to be talking about the Savanah, Soto, Matthew Guerra case. We covered this extensively. Murdered a little bit before Christmas of 2023. The perpetrator in custody, Christopher Preciado, and his father and mother, Ramon and Myrta, in custody in Guerra County jail, awaiting trial. This trial is supposed to be coming this summer of 2024. We'll see how that goes. Hey, before I get into it, I want to say a special thank you to you, the Patreon supporters, the channel members, and all the folks who positively engage here in this community. You guys are what makes this a great place. We give thanks and praise to you, our replay viewers, the moderators, and everyone who subscribes. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Ed Wallace is traveling. He is in the great state of Texas, but he's had a rough day, so he's going to take the night off. But I have two great guests. And before I introduce those guests, I want to get into what this show is going to be about. We are going to speak about the Presciado family, how they are going to be treated and handled day to day in that correction facility, in that jail. It's a big jail. It holds 4,500 inmates. There's gang members in there. There's all kinds of bad people inside there, including Christopher Preciado, who stands allegedly charged with murder of Savanah Soto, Matthew Guerra, and their unborn child, Fabian. They're all been laid to rest, and we're going to get into each and every detail in this case. But this tonight, the show is going to be about what their jail life's about. This facility has a lot of problems in the past, a lot of corruption, a lot of death amongst inmates, a lot of suicides, a lot of things happening in this jail. So I'm going to play this piece to set it up for you. And this is what we're going to be talking about. Two small little pieces. And this is from 3 months ago, folks.
Top story at 10 in a KENS 5 exclusive. The Bexar County Sheriff is expressing his frustrations and concerns over the inmate deaths in his jail.
And just this year, 11 inmates have died while in custody at the jail. And the latest death happening just 2 days ago. All of this comes as today we learned the chief of the jail has resigned. The sheriff says Jaime Rios decided to leave to take care of a family member, and right now the sheriff is working to name a replacement.
Sheriff Salazar says internally the sheriff's office already has someone in mind to replace Rios. KENS 5 reporter Megan Reyna spoke exclusively with him about the new initiatives he's taking to save lives at the jail. Megan?
Well, EC's Henry, the sheriff tells me tonight from Tuesday's incident, the death there, that was a 63-year-old man who was experiencing homelessness, had mental health issues, and had diabetes that he wasn't treating. The sheriff says he was arrested for sleeping on a bench, but believes instead of being in jail, he should have been in a hospital.
We are seeing an inmate population that is sicker. They're coming in with major medical issues.
In response, Sheriff Salazar is launching a new initiative, Operation Lifeguard. He says right now he has a group of deputies and jailers training to become licensed EMTs.
This is just an extra added measure to help cover until such time as medical gets there.
And each jailer, EMT trained or not, will be equipped with a trauma kit.
This pack that I have in front of me, this is actually also something that probably very few, if any, other jails in the state of Texas are doing. There's clotting agents in here, there's tourniquets in here, a lot of trauma-related stuff.
Salazar is also addressing mental health. This year, 2 inmates have committed suicide in his jail. Since 2019, there have been 19 suicides. But in that same time period, Salazar says they've prevented more than 400 inmates from taking their own lives. Right now, he has deputies specially trained to spot people in mental distress working in the jail. He says soon they'll also be working and booking.
If that charge is something that's relatively minor, perhaps we reject that person for mental health reasons and ask that arresting officer to go ED them at a hospital facility because we don't need them in the jail.
A jail, Salazar says, is becoming more crowded.
I just cannot continue to just sit by and let numbers go up that shouldn't be going up, such as a death count.
And Salazar says he's hoping to have that first batch of jailers that are training to be EMTs certified within the next few weeks. He says that program is being paid for through the Commissary Jail Fund. Reporting live from the Bexar County Jail tonight.
So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. They have some problems at that jail, and things in a facility that large, things can go wrong. And you know what? Listen, there's no love affair for this Presciado family. The son, Christopher, stands accused of capital murder. He not only murdered Savanah Soto and Matthew Guerra, but he killed Savanah Soto's unborn son, Fabian, who was full term. She was full term pregnant. This case is beyond vicious, beyond vile. And when you look at it at the end of the day, I have no qualms about them being in a facility like this. As a matter of fact, I feel like it's fitting for them to be in a place where they're not comfortable. Jail classification, and that's what I have my guests on to talk about. The actual intake process, when we see them being perp walked out of the police station at headquarters, San Antonio Police Department, and we see them coming out in handcuffs, we know that they're going to a processing location to have their arrest processed and for them to be put into that jail system at Bexar County. And that's what this next clip I'm going to show you real quick. This is going to go over that process. So I want you guys to take a peek at this, and then I'll bring my guests right on.
Allegations against him that he was part of the Mexican mafia are key to the investigation. Allegations against him that he was part of the Mexican mafia. But assessing tattoos like that is a crucial routine to protect inmates at the Bexar County Jail from other inmates. Tonight, we take you inside the jail to find out how officers try to keep the peace among more than 4,000 criminals.
There's a subculture in jails and prisons that we don't have to agree with, but we have to be cognizant of because the rules exist.
Rules that come with risk. To minimize that, inmates at the Bexar County Jail are interviewed when they arrive to determine where they belong based on their crimes and connections.
Be it gang affiliation, they have enemies in the facility, or if their crime might represent a threat to their safety and security in the facility because it's a heinous act or something that's a high-profile case.
Reyes says crimes against children, sex crimes, and domestic violence are looked down upon by other inmates.
So if somebody's booked on an offense like that, we tell them, don't talk about your crime.
The goal is to place like offenders in the same living unit.
So, for example, if somebody is booked on a nonviolent offense, like traffic tickets, they're not going to be housed in the same living unit with somebody who has a serious offense like robbery or burglary.
Inmates not always honest during those interviews. That's why officers research criminal histories and assess the visual signs.
Somebody gets booked into the facility, denies any gang affiliation, but has tattoos that suggest gang affiliation. Our officers have to be trained to recognize those signs and make decisions with that in mind. It's a real complicated system, but the ultimate goal is to put inmates in the right places to increase safety and security in the facility.
So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. I spent a good 6 to 8 minutes giving you guys a little bit of intro into what we were talking about. I have a special guest. He has spent 30 years in the corrections business in Texas, in the state of Texas. So what better of a guest than to have our good friend of Tier Talk, Joe Pump. Oh, Joe, I'm just going to add you on, Joe. Your own intro. Joe, thank you for joining. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great, Ron. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, Joe, if you could just do the intro. I screwed up your last name. I promised you I would do it. Is it Pomponio?
Pomponio. Pomponio.
I gotta have
Sounds just like it's spelled.
Pomponio. Hey, Joe, just give the audience here a little bit about your background in the correction field.
Yes, sir. I'm currently a 30-year retiree from the Texas Department of Criminal Justice, or better known as the Texas Department of Corrections. Signed in 1991, and I retired in November of 2021 as a lieutenant.
Well, that's a long time to be serving behind the walls, and I got to say, I have a strong amount of respect for the men and women in the corrections field, because we as police officers and detectives, we go out and get these scumbags off the street. And then when they get sentenced, then you guys got a life sentence with them, babysitting them. So it's a very dangerous job. And the men and women in the Department of correction officers are brave. Brave is just is a small way of saying it, because I personally, when I worked in fugitive, used to go to many facilities, from Sing Sing, upstate New York, which is the oldest jail here in the Northeast, to everything in between, federal lockups, and going in there without a gun. Being a police officer, having a gun out on the street all the time, going in there unarmed amongst all these guys and girls, it's intimidating. So I tip my cap to the men and women who work behind the wall. Joe, I wanted to quickly talk to you about Savanah, Soto, Matthew Guerra. This is a very, very, as you heard me describe, a very gruesome murder. They were shot in the back of the head, left inside their vehicle for numerous days, and found parked behind an apartment complex. But what makes it really appalling and really gross is that the female victim was 9 months pregnant. As a matter of fact, she was overdue she was set to be induced. So her unborn son perished in this violent crime.
Yeah.
What happens to these perps, the Preciado family? The mom and dad, of course, are not charged with the murder, but the son, Christopher, 19 years old, has no criminal record. He's now inside this Bexar County jail. Are these inmates just chomping at the bit, ready to go to work on this guy? Do they know that these people are coming in there? Are they watching TV and watching these perp walks like we were watching? How does that go, and how does the administration handle that?
Oh, absolutely. They watch the news just like me and you and everybody else in America watches the news on a daily basis. So, they know a lot ahead of time before, most Americans do. And let's start with the 19-year-old that actually is charged with capital murder. He's 19. He's coming into a correctional facility. Even though he's charged with a heinous crime, I'm sure he's scared to death. Coming into the facility, they all undergo the same intake and medical and mental health screening that, everybody else does. We assess suicide risk. We assess, homicide risk. Is he a threat to himself? Does he have a mental health history? Do they have a criminal history? We research all of this. All of this is taken into consideration, amongst, the classification department once they come in. Most of these style crimes, we're placing them in a seclusion cell for at least the first 24 to 48 hours. Regardless of the way they answer the questions, we always treat them as suicidal risk, because most people that are charged with capital murder or any other kind of heinous crime that makes nationwide news generally has a higher risk of suicide. With his mother and his father, which was very appalling, that the fact that they actually attempted to help him cover up this crime. The mother and father were brought up on charges a lot less severe than the capital murder charge. So they're going to be looked at just a little bit different. Although I assume, and I'm pretty sure that once they were brought in, they were probably placed on what they call an investigative hold. Where they can pretty much have no outside contact with anybody through telephone, mail, with the exception of either their attorney or the detective that's, in charge of handling the case. So there's a lot of factors when they first come in to go over and think about, before we place these guys. But, depending on the culture of your facility too, everybody's heard that stigma, like we played in the clip about the child molesters and the rapist and the all your hard, heinous crimes. That stigma is always out there. That's not necessarily always the case in the facility, but, the stigma is still there nevertheless.
Yeah, and that's what I wanted to ask you, Joe. We heard the administrator there, one of the executives in that facility, say that we recommend that the newly brought the new inmates that are the new intake that's coming in, we advise them not to talk about your crime. But as we just said before this, they have access to TV, and the reason I was playing the perp walkouts here while you were talking is the amount of media attention on this case has been overwhelming. So, the Mexican mafia members, the gang members that are inside this facility, some of the bad people. You hear what he said. We're gonna classify him in the like. So he's 19 and has no criminal record. He's going to be amongst a lot of the same folks that are standing, waiting trial for murder and so forth. So he's not going to be around a lot of nice people. But at the end of the day, he stands accused of murdering an unborn baby. And that's where the real problem comes in for me, because I know from being in and out of these jails and talking to some of these inmates when I transport them, they talk about these child rapists, child murderers, and they despise them. They despise them. But the bottom line is it's up to the administration and the staff to make sure that the care and custody of these inmates are looked after, because they want them to be able to go to court and be tried and have the wheels of justice move and have justice to be served. If they're murdered inside or killed or they kill themselves inside the facility, then they never get that. So
absolutely.
So I wanted to also just touch base with you on how that process goes is initially when they come in. Now, we had Connie from Tier Talk on many times. She talked about the medical, like they go into the medical background. Are you taking any type of psychotropic medication and so forth? So they'll try to clear them in that regard. But once someone gets locked in and the doors close, and I have some pictures of the actual pods that the family is that they're in, and it's those closed in doors, cells where it's not bars like when everyone thinks of a jail. Right. Bars, it's a door and it's a small little opening that they slide the tray in, and there's just a small little piece of glass for them to look in. I think we saw a little clip of the officer doing the 15-minute checks on the suicide watch. That can also be a problem once the person realizes, hey, I'm never getting out of here. And then, then those thoughts come in. So how do you guys deal with that?
We generally, once they come in and we get them medically and physically cleared, once they're placed in the cell, of course, we're continuing to do our half-hour checks on them. If they express any kind of suicidal ideations, then we up our amount of checks from 30 minutes to 15 minutes. But you're absolutely right. When you take a 19-year-old with no criminal history who's charged with a capital, one of the worst crimes that there is, and you put them in the cell, the walls start closing in after a while. And being in charge of their physical safety, we're also in charge of their medical or their mental safety as well. So we keep tabs on how their behaviorisms are. If they don't seem to be coping well, we have a great support network as far as psychiatrists that assist the county jails. Some are county-wide programs, some are statewide programs, and some are citywide programs. But those are definitely options that we can explore on their behalf and give them the mental help that they need to either cope with what they're feeling, cope with their fears, cope with their anxieties, whatever we can do to kind of settle them and help them prepare for trial.
And that's another question that most of the users and on DutyRon.com, one of the main questions as it pertains to this case is, will they be in protective custody? And everyone wants to know, like, how far does this go with protecting these folks that are in there? And listen, the mom, she's going to be in a separate area for females, right? The father and son could potentially be in a similar location. Of course, they're not going to keep them close by. But how how does that work? Will they be in protective custody for a period of time? Will they ever be in protective custody? And how does that get determined, Joe?
I'm sure the son will be right off the bat, just due to the fact that he is actually the perpetrator in this capital murder. The father and the mother, maybe not so much. A lot of their housing has to do with their classification level, and their classification is determined by, prior jailings, prior, criminal commitments, mental health, commitments. All of that plays a factor into custody and housing. Of course, when I say he, I mean, the actual 19-year-old that's charged with the capital murder.
Christopher Preciado.
Christopher, he'll be secluded from everybody by sight and sound. The only person he'll ever see pass in front of his cell will be an officer. He may be in an area where there's other seclusion cells, so he may hear other people, but he will never see them. They're generally dealt with on an individual basis for any kind of, movement, whether it's to go to medical or to give them their required recreation, that kind of stuff. Now, as far as the father and the mother, being that they're charged with, way less severe crimes than they are, it's doubtful that they will be held in protective custody unless the investigating officer or the lead detective on the case is still investigating and he requires an investigative hold. If he does require an investigative hold, then generally they're placed in seclusion with the same restrictions for, telephone, mail, any kind of visitation, with anybody until, the investigator releases that hold. If they're not placed in any kind of hold, then generally they're placed in, in population, in accordance with their classification level. Not quite sure that the mother and the father have any kind of criminal history.
The dad has a slight criminal history, and the mom nothing. That's concerned. They're not hardened criminals.
Right.
The father was, had a couple of arrests. But that's the thing, is like people are like wondering, do they get a ton of rec time? Are they going to get out? Obviously they get to see their attorneys. The mother just recently got assigned a legal aid counsel. The father had allegedly had his own business. So I know it's done by your financial status. And, if you can afford an attorney, then you have to hire one. The kid, I'm sure he's going to get legal aid counsel, and it's going to have to be capital murder counsel. But yeah, the general population and or whether they were being put in protective custody, that was a really big question. And I think by a show of hands in the chat, I mean, there's lots of folks in the chat right now, and thank you for being here. How many people were concerned or just wanted to know, would the entire family be put in protective custody? And we just heard Joe say it's all based on what even intel from inside, right? Doesn't facilities, they have their own intel where they're kind of paying attention to what the talk is amongst the fellow inmates, right? So
absolutely. Yeah, given the size of Bexar County, San Antonio, Texas in general has a large population of Hispanic gangs. Not just Mexican mafia. You got Houston, you got your Tongo Blast, and the list goes on and on. So, as the story airs, most of your correctional officers, that's the prime time for them to be walking through day rooms and kind of ear hustling and listening to what the inmates have to say. And, that's good intel to get back to your supervisor.
Right. Hey, I want to watch the Walkout. It's only 2 minutes, and then we'll have Anthony, because he's sitting there. Anthony's waiting. He can't wait to get on here. Anthony from Tier Talk is going to join us, and he's always got great input when it comes to this stuff. And I know that he's going to have some great info for us that he always likes to share. So let's take a peek at this, and then we'll have Anthony join us. So this is Ramon and the son, Christopher Preciado, the Walkout. And these two were arrested January 3rd of 2024, folks.
Why did you do it? Are you sorry for what happened? Did you know Savanah was 9 months pregnant?
Always speaking to yourself.
She was 9 months pregnant. We have to see her family. You ever seen your
¿Quién
fighter
mató a
say something
Savanah?
about your
¿Quién mató a
side?
¿Quién te
Savanah?
ayudó? Hey guys, everyone this way.
¿Quién mató a Savanah?
¿Lo hiciste solo? ¿Te arrepientes? ¿Quieres decir algo?
Anything to say your
Hey, Joe, I wanted to ask you, and I see you get your mic muted, but is this common for in Texas to let the media get that close to people that are being perpetrators that are being walked out of police station?
Yeah, that's kind of that in specific is pretty unusual. We generally keep them back at a pretty good, where they just can't get up on the suspect, because that's kind of a dangerous issue. You never know, somebody could be mixing that crowd with a vendetta against that guy, and
Right.
he's right there on them. Generally we try to keep them back at a good distance where they still are able to get a good view of the suspect, but we're not going to let them just get up on them like that. No.
My co-host and I found it odd that they would let. I mean, you're going to see even more. They get right up into the car, into the back of the car with the microphones. And at one point, the deputies actually leave him alone with the reporters and go around to the other side of the car. But when I asked somebody that lives locally in San Antonio, they said that they do these perp walkouts like all the time, and they let the news do this. So it's like, according to some people, they let it happen all the time. But I thought safety reasons.
Yeah, that's very odd that they let them get that close. I mean, we do perp walks all the time. I mean, we just did one at our facility not long ago, and I promise you that the media was nowhere near that close. That's a security issue.
Yeah, look, I'm going to let this rip because it happens times two, and then it happens with the mother too.
family?
You sorry?
They want to know why. Why'd you do
¿Qué te hizo
it?
hacerlo? You sorry?
Did you do it? Why did you do it?
Did you know she was pregnant? That's what you say? Huh? Did you care?
Why was it the whole family?
Close to Christmas? Remorse? Anything? Why, man? Any remorse? You sorry?
Would you sorry for lying about what you're saying? I don't know what's going on.
Well, tell
You
us.
just make stuff up.
Tell us. What's going on?
Did you shoot them?
How did you kill them?
Are you in the Unborn video? baby. Did you kill them or did you just hide the evidence?
La mataste. How'd you know Savanah? ¿Quién los mató?
Was it retaliation?
Wow.
You sorry? Who killed them?
If it wasn't you, who was it then?
¿Quién te ayudó? ¿Quién te ayudó?
The only people that are at that door are the news. There's no deputy or anybody there. And
No, and I just can't for the life of me understand why that door stayed open that long. As soon as he was in, that door should have been shut. That's
they had
unbelievable.
that camera was 6 inches from his face.
Yeah. I mean, that could have been a gun hidden in that microphone stand.
I guess they were trusting the media. This is in a Sally Port. It's not open to the public. So maybe they checked these people. Maybe everyone went through a metal detector. I don't know. But I found it odd. And security wise, it just looked dangerous to me.
Very.
Excuse me, guys. Closing door. Excuse me. Excuse me, guys.
Fast forward to the sun now. This is Christopher.
Did you do it? Were you involved?
Are you sorry? You killed them.
You wanna say something?
Just hide the
I'm
evidence.
going to save your family.
What'd you do it?
You were an unborn baby.
Was it you? What do you want to save your family?
What did you do?
Not your family. Anything to say to the
You
family?
sorry? You sorry? What message
You're
you
not
have
going
to
to say
send?
it's an unborn child. It was an entire family.
You sorry?
So there you have it. Unbelievable, right?
Yeah, very unbelievable. I mean, that is absolutely insane that they let him get that close.
Yeah. And again, Ed Wallace and myself we kind of were freaked out about that. We just couldn't believe that they actually let the media get that close. And again, it happened. There was no incident, nothing happened, but I'm sure that somebody had something to say about it. I'm going to just show really quick, and then we're going to add Anthony. And this is the mom being walked out. She's got her Ozzy Osbourne shirt on. I don't know if you've seen this yet, Joe, but this is interesting. So let me show you. Same location.
Your gun? Did you give Christopher your gun to use in this murder? Why did you do it? Are you sorry?
Excuse me, guys.
Nothing to say to the family.
Did you give Christopher your gun? How can you sleep at night? How have you been able to sleep at night?
Ciao, guys. Do you have anything to say to the family?
Did you give Christopher your gun? What is your silence supposed to say? What message is your silence sending? Are you sorry?
So there you have it. Same type of setup. And that was with different days. She got arrested.
Wow.
A little bit after they were arrested. She was arrested on the 10th. They were arrested on the 3rd. So, hey, let's bring in Anthony in because I can't wait to hear what he has to say about this. So, without further ado, our good friend Anthony from Tier Talk coming on in. He's a fan favorite of Crime Time with DutyRon, Joe. Everybody loves him. Anthony, what's happening?
What's up, guys?
Look at that face. What's not to love? Look at that face, man.
What's going on? That I'll tell you something. I'm watching the video.
Before you go, Anthony, I want you to introduce yourself because we have a lot of new subscribers since you've been on last. So let everybody know what you do and you know your experience in the correction field, Anthony.
All right. So hello, everyone. My name is Anthony Gangey. I have been in corrections for over 21 years. I started as a officer. I worked my way to administration. I've worked in 5 different prisons, everything from female facilities, maximum security, treatment centers for sex offenders. I've also been on national TV, just to kind of talk and advocate for the profession. I do have a YouTube channel. Thank you, DutyRon. The YouTube channel is, meant to inform people a little bit about, what we do to give people a better perspective of the work that's being done behind the wall. But it's also meant to help staff navigate their way through the field. And it's funny because a lot of the advice that we give on the channel winds up applying to a lot of people in the real world. So I've been beneficial to have a lot of followers from DutyRon who are just, I'm very loyal to, obviously, who have been able to add some really good questions to my channel that help me develop content that I wouldn't even think of. So I just love being on your show and just being supported by you and of course, Joe as well, but also the DutyRon. It's about DutyRon, Joe.
Yeah. Well, guess what? we definitely love the information that you provide from the correction standpoint. I've watched you, I watched Joe on your channel, and Connie and Russ, and just so many great guests that you have from the correction field. So when we have cases like this you guys are the first that I look to. Anthony, I wanted to get your take on the Presciado family. The entire family is in the Bexar County jail awaiting their trial. The mother and father are, charged with tampering with evidence, altering and destroying and concealing a human corpse. They're being held on $1 million, or I read one report 600,000, one report 500,000. It doesn't matter. They're not going anywhere. The son, capital murder for the murders of Savanah Soto, her unborn child Fabian, and the baby's father, her boyfriend Matthew Guerra. Capital murder. He's held on $2 million bail. What's your take on the challenges that facility has with the Three Musketeers?
All right. So because it's an ongoing case, I mean, the first thing I would be doing is, I don't know if they're all co-defendants, if we want to keep them separated, they can't communicate with each other. I mean, that would be the first thing. I would try to work with the investigative division. Sometimes you're able to do that. You'd want to monitor their mail because all these things matter. Sometimes it'd be funny because sometimes if they're celled with somebody, sometimes they can make an admission to a cellmate, which sometimes could be admissible in court depending on the credibility of the witness. But right now, my big thing is because I don't want to mess with the due process of the case, I would try my best to probably keep them separate and definitely be concerned on how they're able to communicate with each other, because at any point, this could truly violate whatever investigative measures that need to take place to make sure that this goes to court and it's upheld. So I don't think a lot of people are talking about that, but I think that would be my biggest concern right off the bat. How am I going to manage all three of what could be co-defendants?
Right. Yeah. And that's the thing too, is that, a lot of inmates, you got these three co-defendants. You want to make sure that they're not going to be communicating. But I think I think we can all agree that the mom is going to be in a separate spot, right? So she's not going to really be able to communicate with them. But
she could still. So right, but remember, she could still write to them. I mean, all types of communication at this point would have to be heavily monitored. So she could always write to them. I mean, I've seen it in these cases here where communication would not be allowed unless you have the permission from the person that. Hey, Joe, I think I can hear you.
Yeah,
It's kind of. Thanks. Sorry. So sorry, Joe. When you're typing, I heard you. So here's what happens when you have co-defendants like this come in the system. The biggest thing here is that we don't want to be the ones that are responsible for messing around with any violation of due process. So at this point, we would be able to monitor the letters going in and out, basically making sure that they aren't communicating with each other. But this for me, if this was set my way, I wouldn't look to house them in the same facility. I would try to spread them out, be a little bit more easier to manage while they go through this case.
Yeah. And that's probably a good idea to do that. Joe, I wanted to get your take. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with Anthony. If they're treated as co-defendants, we're not going to, again, if they're under an investigative hold, they're not allowed to communicate with each other by any means anyway, regardless if it's telephone, mail. When they're placed on an investigative hold, they basically have no communication with anybody other than the detective or the lawyer. As far as housing wise, if you have a way of housing them at different facilities, that's normally your best bet, because you don't want to take any chance of, taking any chance of them being able to muddy the waters in the due process.
Yeah, 100%. I have a video, Joe and Anthony, from inside the Bexar County Jail, and this video, it's not brand new. It's a couple of years old, but this really gives the audience a good idea of what correctional officers, the ones that are out on those floors, out in the tiers, out in these pods, that what they have to do. And this piece, what I'm going to play here, it actually shows one officer supervising a great amount of inmates by himself. Of course, he's got communication devices if the shit hits the fan, so to speak. But I want to play this because it gives the audience an idea of what they're up against. And when you hear about inmates that get a hold of other inmates and there's death or severe injury, most of these correction officers are outnumbered big time, and they're working such long shifts, sometimes 16, 20-hour days when they're understaffed. And Anthony, you talk about staffing all the time, but let's take a peek at this. And again, this is dated, so I want you guys to know that this is from a little while ago, but it's inside the Bexar County Correctional Facility.
This detention officer's first task on duty, securing what's called a duress box.
We can push the button, say an inmate wants to attack us or two inmates are fighting. We push this button and CERT will be here within a matter of minutes, not even minutes, even seconds.
He is the only officer in this cell pod, 66 inmates under his supervision. One of them is on suicide.
That's one officer for 66.
Yeah,
common.
And wait, let's not. So here's another thing. This is where there's big liability here. This facility had 19 suicides, right? So let's do this. There's no way you can have someone on suicide watch, constant watch, while they got to monitor so many other inmates. Anything can distract somebody from keeping their eyes on that individual. No suicide watch should be in a regular housing unit. So I think that's a flaw.
Well, and to take that one step further, on top of that, being a county jail, the ratio is not supposed to exceed 1 to 48.
Yeah,
and that is something that Texas Commission Jail Standards will hold your feet to the fire over. When we take our licensing for our commission, I mean, it's specific in there that it should be no more than one officer per 48 inmates. And if you have you have one on suicide watch, there's no way you can do 15-minute checks.
But did they say what shift this was? Because outside of the suicide, the person on suicide should not be in that unit 100%. They deserve.
The reason I'm showing this, gentlemen, is not to go over this and critique what's happening here. And I have, like I said, a lot of respect for what you guys do. But I'm doing this because I want to show the audience that the Presciado family is in this facility. And these are facilities that are understaffed. Guys and girls are overworked. And the opportunities for violence amongst inmates, it's not the fault of these officers. It's the fault of the system.
Yeah, but I wonder if this is also an overnight shift, because that could change the dynamic.
Let's listen to the rest of this, folks.
He is the only officer in this cell pod, 66 inmates under his supervision. One of them is on suicide watch.
I have to check them every 15 minutes. And to help me do my job better, to make sure I check them, I have a timer that I set for 15 minutes. And he's still alive.
4 inmates at the Bexar County Jail committed suicide in July, all of them by hanging.
This will actually cut the whatever they used to harm themselves down.
2 weeks ago, this officer had to work a double shift.
And by the time I got done, at the end of the day, my legs and my hips were hurting me from going up and down these stairs.
He sweeps every...
Hips were hurting me from going up and down.
So I want to show you right here in cell 30, you see the face of an inmate looking. And they said that a lot of the interaction that these inmates have in this tiny little window is when the officers walk by. And that's really all of the interaction that they're getting at certain times during the day.
These stairs.
He sweeps every cell.
Believe it or not, this could be used as a weapon. Anything you're not supposed to have? You want to give up?
Of course not.
But a search finds that's not true.
They get these flex pencils. They're literally flexible, and they wrap it with stuff to make it harder. For them, it's just a pencil. For me, I look at it as a weapon.
Cell by cell, he looks for contraband.
This is fermenting bananas, and they use it to as a starter for their hooch. All this could be one heck of a party. I'll open doors on the hour, every hour.
These inmates spend up to 16 hours a day in this common area.
That's how we pass our time. You know, a little raffle, a little horse race.
I know my rules. For the most part, everybody follows them.
A nonstop.
So that officer by himself with all of those inmates.
Wait, the biggest no-no in this whole video, and Joe's going to agree, you never go into an inmate's cell with the inmate in the cell.
While you're doing a search, absolutely, yeah.
The guy's sitting in the bed, and the other guy's in there.
But you know, that video paints a very realistic picture. You know, we're very outnumbered. There's no doubt. But you know, that still doesn't negate the safety. That's just crazy.
Let's put that back up on the screen here. So this is that one officer who was in charge of 66 inmates on that shift. Granted, he had a TV crew with him, so he should have known. He's inside that cell. He's got his back turned at one point to the guy in the bed. This is a tragedy waiting to happen right here. As far
absolutely.
And also, hey, DutyRon, let me ask you a question out of curiosity. Is he walking around with the keys?
I mean,
and he's just going into the cell with the keys to the unit?
I don't. I would have to assume, because it looked like there was a board, an electronic board, to open and shut the doors. But I'm sure that he's got keys. He's gotta no.
Right. So at any point right now, he could get taken advantage of and lose total control of the unit.
Yeah. You see this board here? It looks like, I mean, I know you guys, especially Joe, you know about this. That's electronically opening and closing the doors. No?
Doors, yeah. Yeah. And it looks like off to the right there's another that look like another command picket that may have control of those outer doors. So he may have the keys to the cells inside that pod, but I don't think he's going to have access to the outside.
Let's let the rest of this play, guys. Let's see this, and then we'll come back. But again, this is where the Presciados are. They are inside this very facility. This is Bexar County Jail.
Bananas, and they use it to as a quote starter for their hooch. All this could be one heck of a party. I'll open doors on the hour, every hour.
These inmates spend up to 16 hours a day in this common area.
That's how we pass our time. You know, a little raffle, a little horse race.
I know my rules. For the most part, everybody follows them.
A non-stop job, but one this detention officer tells us he loves. We didn't mention the officer's name for safety reasons. There are 959 uniformed positions here at the jail. As of August 1st, there were 74 vacancies. And last month, county commissioners approved more than $500,000 in overtime pay for those officers. Reporting from...
So there you have it. The officers, male and female, are up against losing battle of these numbers. The numbers, they're outnumbered. And so that's why, like, some people say, oh, it's outrageous that, you know, inmates get killed or kill each other in these facilities. And how come it happens? It just takes a little bit of an opportunity, a window of opportunity. No?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I think part of hey, Joe, I also think part of that was staged, and I could be wrong, because that is the easiest retrieval of contraband that I've ever seen. You know, where you just walk in, take the contraband, and no resistance, no follow up. I could be wrong, but
it very well could be. But back at the original subject, that video paints a perfect picture of how these things happen inside these jails. You know, when you even have an officer tied up for 10, 15 minutes doing a cell shakedown, you know, what is the rest of the population doing?
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, the constant watch aspect unique too, because like for suicide watches, obviously there's going to be the constant observation, which is literally direct second by second watch, and then you can go down to a 15-minute watch, which is still done in a more controlled setting. The problem here is that at any moment, timer or not, the officer could be occupied, and to hold that level of accountability where he's got to run a unit and go back and forth every 15 minutes. That's why there's that amount, in my mind, that amount of suicides, because there's no way you're able to balance both. Some jails actually do another thing that's foolish. They put the constant watches in the areas of intake, and the officer doing intake winds up also doing the suicide observation, and then you wind up losing people in the tanks because the officer's tied up doing the intake.
Hey guys, is it commonplace to have one officer to 66 inmates? I mean, does that sound like a high number?
In a county jail, yes. At the state level, you know, from 30 years experience at the state level, there's been times where one officer's had 200 inmates.
Wow.
And sometimes even higher. As you know, right now there's so many vacancies in the state of Texas that, you know, you normally have one picket officer and one rover to each section, and there's sometimes where you just have a picket officer and you have one rover doing 5 sections.
Insane. Hey, Joe, a lot of our fans, a lot of the subscribers, a lot of our community members, they want to know the difference between a jail and a prison. Could you please explain that to them, Joe?
Okay, so jail is for the people who have been arrested and awaiting trial. Just basically short story. Your actual prisons are for those who have actually been convicted and sentenced to do time for their crimes. Jail is more of a temporary stay until the outcome of either your trial or your charges are dismissed. Prisons, you've already been convicted and given a sentence, and that's where you're going to carry out your sentence.
Yeah, and it's a sentence of a year or more.
Right. Some jurisdictions it's different. Like here in New York, it's 18 months. You could stay at Rikers up to, and then you'd have to go up to, you know, upstate if it's a longer sentence. But yeah, I mean, thank you for explaining that. I know, Anthony, you've explained it many times on previous shows, but I want to go to, if you gentlemen don't mind, I love to do interactive with the chat. Hashtag Joe, hashtag Anthony, hashtag DutyRon. You got 3 Italians here. We are talking with our hands, but we want to talk with you. We want to hear what your thoughts are. So I'm going to look at the chat, you know, super chats. I'm going to check them out. I know there wasn't many tonight, but it's always great to see the super chats come in. Christine, thank you for being a member. She says, you are amazing. Thank you for being a member for a month. Our good friend Jeff from Wyoming, Litweiler, he says, best show on any network. Here at Peacock, DutyRon. We got him beat. Thank you, brother. I appreciate that. Thank you. All right, let's look. Some folks are saying, hey, where's the pizza? Here's somebody, Flat Daddy-O says, yes, my daughter works at the jail. It's it's people that have a sentence of under 2 years. Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate that. Debbie Galloway says, at DutyRon, 3 handsome men in one spot. Wow. Thank you.
I'll take it.
Hey, Jennifer Nobles, our good friend from Bakersfield, California. She's in the chat saying hello to everybody. I'm trying to look for some questions. If you guys see anything in the chat, just let me know, but I'm just scrolling through it. All right, so we're going to continue on. I'm just looking for some questions. Here's our good friend Angela from Long Island. Hashtag Anthony, hashtag Joe. How come some of the inmates' doors have a closed window that the officer has to open to see inside it, and some don't? Is that dangerous, not seeing what's going on? Anthony?
I could get that. Okay, so if they could be referring to the food ports. So to be honest with you, all of them should be closed. Food ports are extremely dangerous. Unfortunately, some officers could unfortunately be complacent in this, and they may find it more easier to open it and be accessible so they could pass food and whatnot. But if they're referring to the food ports, then yes, when the officer is touring, if they have to open up a food port, it should be one at a time. But in this case here, I think a lot of the food ports were open. That's the first thing I looked at, and I think that's a concern. I mean, unless Joe sees something different.
Joe?
Well, most of your solid outer doors, in addition to your food ports, some of those doors have windows on them where the inmates can't look out, and that could be for security reasons. That could be you may have a sexual offender in there who likes to continue his sexual acts, especially towards female officers. And a lot of times they close that to alleviate, any further instances of that. Or it may be a fact that, it could be the suicidal inmate. They may be leaving it closed until the officer walks by, just so, they have something to look in. A lot of those times when those windows are shut like that, it's due to security reasons, for sexual offenses within the prison.
So I'm not actually familiar with, I thought it was the food port. So what is that something that Texas? I've never seen that, where they allow coverage on the window from the outside. Is that something from Texas?
Yeah, a lot of our facilities do have solid outer doors on the outside of the actual visible windows. And, that could be for your sexual predators that you have locked up, because you do have a certain percentage of that population that will, perpetrate sexual crimes against female officers in the form of masturbation or,
urine, throwing feces,
whatever. Some of those windows actually it may not have glass. They may just have like the screen mesh on it.
Right. Yeah.
And not an actual window. So therefore they have a solid outer cover to close over that, so they can't throw projectiles through that window as well.
Well, that's actually pretty unique, because I would wonder if there would be a liability connected to that if that remains closed for too long, and then you kind of forget to be able to peek in.
So Lisa's a channel member. She's saying hashtag DutyRon. Will we have to wait until their trials are over to see the interrogations? Absolutely. The body cam footage, the interrogation stuff is held, for reasons obvious, until after the trial's over. That's why we see with Shonda Vander Ark and Paul Ferguson, the body cam footage has been released. You can do the FOIA request and get that. And you see it on the internet because they have already been, Paul pleaded guilty and is going to be sentenced shortly. And Shonda has already been sentenced to 2 life terms in prison. Florida Pete, our good friend down in Southern Florida, says late night with DutyRon in prime time. Yeah. Hey, Pete, good to see you, brother. So let's see. There's a couple more questions because I don't want to. A lot of people are hanging around and asking these questions. Eve O says hashtag Gangey. I like that. She's calling you by your last name. She's like, hey Eve, look at me. Is there a quality control process?
Always. Everything inside a jail or prison are going to have quality assurance individuals. One, we have direct oversight in regards to making sure that we're providing the inmates what they want, what they should provide.
Yep.
And then also, like if you have a medical vendor, sometimes we'll hire quality assurance specialists to oversee the medical providers, the mental health providers. So yeah, there's always going to be quality assurance people in play, 100%.
Consistent Insomniac 49, great friend. Thank you, Anthony. You're always answering great questions. She says, hashtag DutyRon, hashtag Joe, hashtag Anthony. Isn't there much more freedom in a prison than a jail?
Actually, to be perfectly honest, yes.
The opposite.
Jails here in Texas are much more restrictive. Your county jails are much more restrictive than they are in the state penitentiaries.
Right.
Your state penitentiaries, you have a lot more mass movements that the jails don't have, such as education and things like that. They go direct.
Larger, right, Joe? They're typically larger. The state,
yeah, typically a lot larger. Like, you know, say your county jails are required to get 1 hour rec 3 times a week, where your penitentiaries here are required to have 2 hours of rec every day.
Right. Yeah.
So, you know, there's a lot more freedom of movement inside the prisons than there are at the actual jails.
I'm going to put myself full screen with this. I'm going to take some heat for it, but hey, listen, folks. You know, Christopher Preciado and the parents, you know, Ramon and Myrta, these, in my opinion, are subhuman. These are the lowest of life because the parents aided and abetted. They helped remove these bodies from the location wherever their son allegedly killed them, and knowing that this Savanah Soto, this young woman, was full-term pregnant. In my eyes, and this is just in my opinion, Christopher should be thrown underneath the jail in a basement, and they should be lowering a bucket to him. And that's just how I see it. And listen, I'll take some heat for it, but these types of subhuman, vile, evil, sick demons do not deserve to have 3 square meals a day and health care and have their teeth looked at and have all of their needs taken care of. But this is what we have. This is our criminal justice system. This is how it is here. But like I said, we all feel similarly. I would say this to you guys. I don't feel like they should be getting any kind of special treatment, but that is how it is. And again, I know I'll take some heat for it, but it is what it is. And if you agree with me, then so be it. If you disagree with me, I can respect you disagreeing with me. And gentlemen, I'm not even going to ask you to comment on it because you work in the corrections field or you worked in the corrections field. I know, Anthony, you're still working. So I wouldn't ask that of you guys because I know that this is just how a lot of our folks feel. And I feel the same way. I'm with you. I'm now a civilian. I'm no longer a law enforcement professional. I'm a retired professional. And I can say that with freedom. When you look at people like this that do such vile things, listen, there are criminals, I feel, that can be rehabbed and can be reintroduced into society. But some that commit such heinous acts, like even, I keep going back to the Shonda Vander Ark case. The son is obviously Paul. He helped her commit murder, essentially, and he got away with testifying for the prosecution. And this 20-year-old, 19-year-old at the time, got away with killing his brother and not being charged with it. But he's up for first-degree child abuse sentencing in the state of Michigan. In my eyes, I think that is somebody who's a danger to society. But these are all of our opinions, and we have them. Opinions are like assholes. Everyone's got one, right? So at the end of the day, this is how I feel. And you know, when you look at some of the horrible things that some of these inmates have done to human beings, and these guys in the correction field, guys and girls, they got to deal with them on a regular basis. They got to be kind of, not like they have to be really nice to them, but they have to treat them like human beings. And that's, you know,
the toughest thing in corrections, I think that a lot of people may not understand, is that we have to not judge them on the act, but treat them as humans, because we are responsible ultimately for that well-being, whether it's they're going to serve a lifetime jail, minimum amount of time in jail or prison, whatever it is, or if they're going to be carried out to the death sentence. But the point is, we can't stay too focused on what they've done, because ultimately it could affect us. I mean, I worked in facilities where we house sex offenders who, I have 2 girls. And at the end of the day, it's like, well, can't believe you got to give them these things. I mean, aren't you a father? And it's like, yeah, but that's the one thing I have to make sure doesn't control me when I'm doing that position. At the end of the day, I'm paid because I have a job to do, and that job is to do A, B, C, D. And at the moment I feel that me being a father is going to affect me dealing with this inmate, then I'm no longer trusted to do that position.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a difficult job. I wouldn't want to have to do it. And again, I've been around, I put handcuffs and I rode for hours in a car, in an airplane with murderers. And it's not a great feeling, but it's part of the job. It's what you got to do. I see a lot of people agreed with me on some of the things that I said. And again, I went out there on a limb because I wanted you guys to know a little bit of how I feel about this stuff, and we see, as correction officers, correctional professionals, correctional executives, and police detectives, we are interviewing and interrogating these people. We're getting confessions out of them as it pertains to some of the heinous crimes that they've committed. And when they confess to us or when they tell us what they did, we have to hold our composure and still continue to conversate with them and continue to get more information. And that is some of the toughest things to do, but you have to do it. That's what makes you a professional. That's what separates the professionals from the amateurs. So when you have somebody like this in front of you, you have to get that information. But then when they're sentenced and convicted and sentenced, then these two gentlemen get them, and they have to now carry out what is part of the criminal justice system, and that's to treat everybody fair and with your dignity and as a human being. So what's funny, and I think Joe may see it, or maybe DutyRon as well. So we have a lot of people that come into the profession new, and one of the questions that they ask the channel is, "What's your thoughts on knowing what they, knowing what they've done, and could it affect how you do your job?" So now, as administration, when you read the files, the files are very specific. I mean, they're very detailed because they're written from the detectives who are able to break these individuals down. But I would tell rookies, knowing what they've done and knowing how they've done it are two different stories. I get why you may want to know what they've done because, okay, it could affect safety and security, whatever the case may be. But be careful when you open up that door to how they've done it, because that's something that you cannot turn off no matter how much you try. Once you read the details of something, like Grant, let's say you deal with a child rapist. It's like, okay, I know they're a child raper. But once you read how they've done it, there's no way. It makes it almost impossible to have to work with that individual every day. So I always tell people, be careful what you're asking for and know the difference of what they've done and how they've done it. I have no problem telling you what they've done, but do not open that door to how they've done it. Yeah. Yeah. Well, listen, this has been an informative hour, and I appreciate, we could go on probably for a whole nother hour talking about this because there's so much to cover here. But, we wanted to give you guys an overview on the care and custody of the Preciado family, the mother, the father, Ramon and Myrta, and their son, Christopher. They are inside this jail, and this jail is less than perfect. None of them are perfect, right? These facilities hold 4,500 at max with their beds. That's a lot of inmates. It's a huge facility. Rikers Island over here in New York City is humongous. You got to take you have to actually go over a bridge to get to this Rikers Island. I've been over there and in Rikers. It was part of my daily job when I worked in the fugitive. And I was in the trip team. So I would go to Rikers Island on a regular basis. We even had, it's closed now, a floating barge, a floating cruise ship that was converted into a jail in Bronx, New York. And that floating cruise ship held 2,200 inmates. So think about it. Floating on the water, docked, obviously. And we used to go in and out of there. And the conditions inside that place, I got to tell you, as soon as I opened the door and got in there, the smell of urine hit you right in the face. It's like, whew. And after a while, I kind of got used to it and it just didn't affect me. But the smells that you smell inside these facilities, man. Oof.
You smell adrenaline. As soon as you walk into a facility, you smell people that, because they're always,
yeah,
you could smell it. There's like it's like what it is, because everybody's constantly worried, they have anxiety, they have stress in it, and it comes out, and you can actually, when you walk into a facility, you can smell adrenaline.
Oh yeah. Yep. Well, I think we took a lot of the questions. Curious Kiwi has hashtag DutyRon, hashtag Anthony, hashtag Joe. I take my hat off to you guys. I sure couldn't do that job. Thank you, Curious Kiwi. We appreciate it. I'm going to scan really quick the chat because it's moving pretty fast.
There's some good questions.
Lieutenant Pete Pranzo, Harlem Raiders, is in the building, and with Lieutenant Pete comes his beautiful wife, Rochella. Thank you for being here, and thank you for guys being part of this community. Yarn Barf says, like walking into Staten Island Zoo. That's a pretty good analogy. So Debbie Galloway says, thank you, gentlemen, for your information. Much appreciated. Lexi is giving you the stress hormone, pheromone.
That's what I was looking for. Yeah, that's what I was looking for.
Stress pheromone.
Thank you.
Does fear have a smell? Says Mel. Yeah, it does. There it is.
That's the smell. Yeah, good job. That's what I was looking at. I couldn't get the.
Tons of people here. EW42 is putting it in. Vicky saying thank you. Floating Jail, another great show. DutyRon. Thank you, Simi Sharp. I appreciate it, Simi Sharp. Listen, I think we got everything. Anthony, did you see anything that we might have missed question wise? I know you're looking
at. No, I just want to say, me not be able to get to the questions. I get it, but the questions that they ask actually make me think like I could do something on this, because I don't think of asking these questions because it's hard for me after 21 years to kind of look at the profession in a like an initial light. Right. So I love some of these questions. I'm thinking like right now I already have an idea for a few shows based on some of the questions that the people are asking, including they asked one about correctional officer pay and does that affect staffing?
Oh yeah, let me just say thank you for bringing that up, Anthony. I have I took some notes. The corrections, the sheriff Javier Salazar, he's the sheriff there. He has fought for pay increases for his officers. He recently received a 10% pay increase, increasing the salaries for starting correction officers in Bexar County from $58,000 to $61,000 a year. And he has also bolstered his recruitment effort. And instead of getting, as according to him, instead of getting a couple of applications every couple of weeks, he's now has dozens of new applications. And they're trying to get quality over quantity, but he's talking about the pay increases, which are helping attract more, candidates to come into the system. So that's a great thing. And you always could use good, men and women to come into this profession. Here's a good one from Donna. She says, #DutyRon to your guests. On a human level, do you deal with murderers or of children without anger? I'm going to answer part from my side, because you guys can answer this too. It takes a lot, but again, at the end of the day, we are professionals, and if we just take out our frustrations and anger on these people, it would make us criminals just like them. So we refrain from that. We take a step back. If we have to, there's been instances where I've had to leave the interrogation room and let my partner take over and just walk out and take a breather and then come back. So it's about professionalism, and it's about me being able to go home and lay my head down at night and say to myself and say to my family and say mainly to myself, I did the right thing. Anthony?
All right. So for me, and I think Joe will probably agree, but it's at this point, because I've been doing it for so long, it's all about respect. I mean, I really don't look at what they've done anymore. It's sad to say, it kind of blurs. I would also say, sadly, and I don't know if this is a good thing or not, your humor in order to deal with what's in front of you kind of becomes a little bit dark and sinister, where not most people will get the joke, but your peers will. But having said that, I think that's as I mentioned before, that's one of the toughest parts of the job, is to basically work with individuals that really are just the worst of the worst. But having said that, I just deal with them interaction-wise. If I have a problem with an inmate, it's not because of what they've done that brought them in. It's what they've done just now.
Right.
That matter the most.
Joe?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. At the end of the day, it's what makes us professionals. I learned a long time ago, a thug is a thug is a thug. After a certain period of time, I could care less what their crimes are. If you treat them all the same, you establish consistency and respect amongst the offender population. To do this job, you definitely acquire a dark humor. After 30 years, I can promise you I will never be a customer service representative at Walmart. That shit will never happen. But in order to do this job, and that's why I praise the correctional officers all the time, because this is a job like no other. And same with the police officers. We do a job where we deal with the worst that society has to offer, but yet we're expected to keep our composure, our emotions under check, our anger in control. There's a whole host of things that we have to do in addition to our job, and it makes it tough. It does. It makes it very tough. But at the end of the day, like you said, can I go home and lay my head down on my pillow and say that I kept my integrity in check, and did I do the right thing?
Right. And that's what it's about at the end of the day. So a couple of people said, here's your way crafting. Do you gentlemen need counseling dealing with these types of criminals? I personally never had to utilize it, but it's there for us through our departments. And everybody's afforded it. It's just that sometimes a stigma comes with it when you come forward, at least in the NYPD, they kind of like look at you like, oh, you can't handle it or stuff like that. But things are changing and evolving. This is, I started in 1991 with my police career, and since I've retired, things have changed quite a bit. So I think it's readily available for the members of the NYPD, and I'm sure the respective departments and in the corrections field, it's no different. And all of that stuff is afforded to them. So somebody sent me a message saying, did I get the baby picture of baby Fabian? Yes, I did. I choose not to show that, Evo. Thank you for sharing it with me. But I choose not to show it because, again, that's up to the family if they want to show it. I personally won't use my platform to show a dead baby on my channel. I just won't. I can't do it. I just won't. Again, I've gone to the funeral of little baby Thomas Valva, who was murdered by his then NYPD father, Michael Valva. I went to that funeral and saw him dressed in a white suit in a coffin, 7 years old. People were I saw people with their phones out taking pictures. I would never do that, and I would never show it. I would not ever want to put that out there, but it's in my mind because I've seen it and it's always there. But yeah, thank you for sharing it with me. I looked at it and I shed a tear actually looking at it. But I appreciate you sending that to me, Evo. So, all right, gentlemen, I want to just say thank you from the bottom of my heart and from me as a professional, from one professional to another. You guys are outstanding. And Joe, I knew that you would be unbelievable on this topic, and you came through. So I appreciate you taking out an hour of your time, your busy work schedule and so forth. But hey, Joe, I always say this to all my guests. Will you promise to come back if you had a good enough time? Would you come back and visit us again sometime?
Absolutely. I had a blast being here, and I thank you for letting me come on. It was a great topic. I think it's one that, the public had a lot of questions about, and I think this is a great way to try to explain some of those questions for them. And it was actually, I had a lot of fun with it, and I appreciate it a lot, Ron. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Joe. Anthony, I know you're always going to come back. What's happening? What do you see, Anthony? You see something?
No, it's just this one. There's a lot of good questions popping up, and there was one question that I wanted to. I never answered that question before, and I wanted to jump on it. I was going to share something personal, which I usually don't do on my channel because I'm still on the job. But am I allowed to? The picture's on me. Can I share something or no?
Yeah, of course. Go ahead.
All right, I appreciate this. I never really talk personal about how I feel about something, but a lot of people were kind of feeding off the question about dealing with these type of individuals. So I want to say something. So I worked in 5 prisons. Again, pretty much maximum security prisons, female prisons, the treatment prison for sex offenders. So I want to mention something when it comes to self-worth. in order for me to know that I have value in what I do believe, not all, but I do believe some people can change, because I believe in the dedicated work that happens behind the wall. I oversee the rehabilitation side as well. So I oversee social workers, whatever it was. But I will tell you this, and I've never really shared this before, and it's not in an effort to minimize the important work that's being done in this one specific facility, because they definitely go above and beyond. But when it comes to working with the sex offender population, I have to force myself to believe a little more that the work that's being done does have an effect. I'm not going to say they're going to be cured, because when I talk to mental health, I asked mental health, I said, hey, let me ask you a question. I'm having a little problem here making an adjustment here, because I have to find my worth. And when I was at the other facilities, I would speak at graduations, attend programming. I mean, my role as administration is a little bit different than custody, because I have to be involved in all efforts of the prison side. I have to be involved with custody as well as rehabilitation. You know, I got to be active. But when I went to the sexual offender unit, I felt like, okay, I don't know if I'm 100% believable. So in regards to the outcome, the positive outcome. So I remember the mental health professional telling me, she goes, Gangey, we're going to put a lot of effort in them. But the best way you can handle this, it's not about curing them, because you're not. It's about eliminating their compulsion. And I just kind of utilize that as a way to say, okay, I got to believe in something, guys, or else I'm not going to be able to do the job. So the people that are asking these questions, again, guys, these are just some questions that got me thinking about myself. And I really appreciate that. I actually needed that question.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that, Ant. This is, an unscripted show, and this is what we do. So this is coming straight from the heart, and I appreciate you sharing that. So here, folks, I want to thank everyone for being here. I want to thank the replay viewers, the moderators, the new subscribers, the old subscribers, and everybody in between. For those of you who are not yet subscribed here, please, it's free. Hit that subscribe button. Follow us on all things social media. One word, DutyRon, Ed Wallace, and I will be live tomorrow night doing some Forensic Friday. We're going to do a 3-week recap on the 3rd week of the Michelle Triconis trial that's going on in Connecticut. So we've been covering that, and I think we'll be live tomorrow night. I want to just also say thank you to all of the people who leave us comments down below in the comment section. You guys are what makes this a great community. I thank and praise each and every one of you for your questions, your thoughts. The way you handle yourselves is second to none in the true crime community. So I tip my cap to each and every one of you who are here with us, and also those who watch on the replay. Great questions. And if you want to continue the conversation, you can leave a comment down below in the comment section. It's a way to communicate with us afterwards. I know Anthony goes and looks at some of the comments sometimes, and Joe, you're welcome to do that as well. So if you have any questions, just put it to either Anthony, Joe, or myself. We'd be happy to answer it. All right. On behalf of Crime Time with DutyRon and Ed Wallace, and I want to thank, my guests again for taking out the time. We wish you a good night from New York, Texas, and I don't know where this guy is. I think he's in Jersey or something like that. I don't know.
Jersey.
All right, guys. Good night from Crime Time with DutyRon. We'll talk to you soon. Peace.